Before buying this lens or any lens in general, I want you to think about one thing, and that's how you think as a photographer. Hey, how's it going everybody? My name is Jaden, and in this video we're going to be talking about this. Except it's not in there, it's on the camera right now. This is the Sigma 16mm F1.4. There's 101 reviews out there that talk about this lens in specific and how great the f1.4 is and how much light it lets in and how sharp this lens is. Instead of focusing on all those specs again, talking about the sharpness and pixel peeping every image, I thought of going over some of my experiences with this lens and 16mm in general and just dive into some details about it. And if you're looking for anything in specific, here are some timestamps so you can jump to your favorite bits. To start off, let's talk about aperture. I know I said I wouldn't talk about this, but come on, we really have to. The aperture controls two things. One, how bright an image is, and two, the depth of field. As an engineering student, I have a fairly busy schedule. Therefore, I wanted a lens where I can shoot my YouTube videos at any time and not just be restricted by the daylight. So I wanted to be able to just close the blinds and not have you guys know whether it was day or night. And as proof of that, you can check any of my previous YouTube videos where I talk to the camera. So let's talk bokeh. If you haven't used an f1.4 lens before, you'd be surprised as to how shallow the depth of field actually is. Just to give you an idea, this is how shallow it is. While this hand is in focus, my other hand is barely in focus. There are also two things that control bokeh. One is the aperture itself, and two is how much compression your lens has. And as I mentioned in my 70-200 video, even at f4, the 70-200 has bokeh for days because of that compression. And the amount of compression you have increases with your focal length. Since this is a wide angle lens, you basically have no compression. So it's really nice to have an f1.4 aperture to blur out the background and make it super creamy. And just to give you an idea, that is how creamy the background is. You basically can't even read the cover of that book. Now let's talk about the 16mm focal length in general. One thing to note is that this is an APS-C lens, meaning that its effective focal length is actually 24mm. When I first got this lens, I either found it too wide or not wide enough in my use cases. And I think the best use for this lens, if you're a videographer or a YouTuber, is your A-roll shots themselves. Because in a tight space like I am in my room, I still have enough space in the background and enough space to add text and whatnot on this side. And even if I center myself in the frame, there's enough of space around me without me having to be extremely far from the camera. I'm not even arm's length from my camera, and that's just great. But the other things I like to use it for, like I said, are cityscapes. Especially taking pictures of city during sunset, the low light capabilities of this lens and its wide angle aspect is really good. The other thing that is slightly unconventional is wide angle portraits. I know that this focal length distorts faces, but other portrait lenses like the 50mm or 85mm are really good if you want to get upper body shots of your model. But if you really want a bit more detail to give your audience an idea of where your model is and just have some information about the background, this lens does a really good job at it. Before buying this lens or any lens in general, I want you to think about one thing, and that's how you think as a photographer. Because I find that when I compose my shots in my head, I always think zoomed in. I always care for the details. That's why most of the time I like walking around with my 70-200 because I can just be away from my subject, zoom in real quick and capture all the details that I want. And I've had friends tell me the exact opposite, that when they compose their shots, they always think of the wide angle aspect first and then think about, all the details. Okay, two quick points before we wrap up. One, the autofocus on this lens is crazy. It's super fast and super accurate. And there are some concerns about the noise this lens makes when focusing. Yes, it is noticeable when you're in a quiet room like I am, but trust me, in the real world, even in video, you're not gonna notice it. And the next thing is that yes, this lens does not have OIS, but one, for photography it really doesn't matter, and two, it is great to throw on a gimbal. Seriously, this focal length is it's probably the most perfect focal length for a gimbal. And that said, thank you so much for watching everyone. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and all that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.